All right, so I've got 8 questions here for you on getting either started for portrait photography or just some kind of more helpful tips. So first question, how do you choose the right location?
Well, it depends somewhat on the season. You're going to make sure, now this evening it's actually really warm out here, which is unusual for September here, but it's the kind of day where it's going to be warm in any kind of outdoor location. So I chose this particular spot because I really love the texture of this old barn here, the fact that the light is coming into where I'm getting some shots where I can skim over the top of that. And so in this situation, I chose it because I knew it was a familiar location, and that's one thing I would recommend, that you take the time to get familiar with the location before you try to go to it, and so you know what you're facing, whether you have permission to shoot there, you're going to run into issues with somebody. And then obviously if it's in a colder environment, I know that I'm not going to have long out of doors, so I'll bring maybe blankets along or something to where it's just really quick, to where you're not keeping the model where they're shivering, because if they're miserable, you're not going to get very good shots.
So we are out here using natural light today. Is that all that is necessary, or is something more required, like a flash or a reflector?
So I actually prefer using off-camera strobes, where I'll use a wireless trigger for them. Just gives you a little bit more control, particularly if you want to backlight your subject. So if, say you want the sun behind them, but you still need to fill the front of their body. So even outdoors, I do prefer having flashes. Now I'm actually using natural light and then supplemented with a reflector. So we've got just a reflector here with silver and gold, kind of depending on what we want to use in this setting. The actual reason why I am using a reflector rather than strobes in this setting is the simple reason that I haven't been shooting Fuji for very long, and all of my lighting gear is actually designed around Canon or Sony. So as a byproduct, I'm using available light solely because that's really my only option I have this evening. And so I've been using this to help to augment the fill light, and so it gives me a little bit more flexibility in different lighting conditions.
In your experience and personal opinion, what are the best camera settings, or at least optimal camera settings, when you're doing portrait photos?
All right, the biggest thing I think to be aware of is going to be your actual aperture, because that's going to control depth of field, meaning how much is going to be in focus. If you have just one person on frame, you can use a wide aperture like f1.4, or f1.8, or f2, because very likely you want to just really blur out a background. But know that if you're shooting with a longer focal length, the longer the focal length, the shallower the depth of field is going to be. And so if you get more than one person in the frame, it means you're going to have to shut down that aperture some, because otherwise you're going to have one person in focus and the other not. So you really have to learn how to apply aperture selectively when it comes to the amount of people you have on frame, and to understand that a big aperture is going to have a blurry background, but it may also mean that not everyone and not all subjects are in focus. So you have to find the tension between those two things.
More photos or less?
I would say more photos, particularly if you've got a paying client and you need to make sure that you get the moment.
So you've become interested in photography, you want to build a portfolio, you want to start getting paid for this, you want to show people your work. Should you go for diversity, a lot of diversity, or kind of more narrow it down to show your expertise within a certain field?
Yes, so I really think that has to be a question that's answered by the individual. Do you want to be someone that can do a lot of different kind of work? If you do, then you need to show versatility. You need to show that you can actually do, in your portfolio, you can do a wide variety of work. If you actually are going after a target niche, say for example, senior portraits or couples portraits, you need to build your portfolio around your best work in that particular niche, because that's what you're going after.
Okay, quick fire question.
Okay.
Best way to display your portfolio or platform?
I would say a couple of things. For me personally, building my own personal website was important. I didn't have a lot of traffic in the beginning. Now later on, having my own personal website is huge, because I have control over it. I have control over monetizing it, all of those things. So in the long run, it's been profitable for me. But I also think there's a lot of value in properly utilizing social media to showcase your best work, because sometimes, particularly if you are wise in tagging maybe either the brands of the equipment you're using or tagging other people, you'll have an opportunity to get a lot of eyes on your work, which in turn can open up doors.
All right, so you've got your gear, you know your settings, you've got your location. Now you need somebody to take a picture of. Who do you ask?
All right, well, it's first of all someone less sweaty than me at the moment, preferably. But for me personally, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I will incorporate doing a portrait shoot or something into an event where I've already been hired to do, and so in that case the model is automatic. It's the person that I've already got using. Now some people that are serious about doing model type work, you can use a modeling agency and you can hire through that. There's a lot of different ways through the internet where you can contact models and so hire someone in that way. In other cases, if you're wanting someone for free, you may want to look, as I've done for this shoot, towards family members. And so in exchange, maybe you're going to give them some photos for their social media platforms. And so there's a lot of different options you have. And for me, if I absolutely have to get portraits more for an actual gear review and I can't find anyone else, I set the camera on a tripod and start smiling.
So you've got your models here. When you are working with them, are you asking them for certain poses, or are you allowing them to more kind of free flow and just do what's natural to them?
Okay. For me, it's more about a hybrid, something between the two. I do think that you get some of your most natural interactions if you allow people, if you have more than one model, allowing them to interact with each other, particularly with couples, is going to give you the most genuine performances, because they're going to show much more kind of love or intensity looking at each other than they are looking just at the camera or looking at you. But at the same time, there are some people that are really, they're not comfortable in their own body, or they really freeze up when they get in front of a camera. And so in that point, I think it's important to develop a little bit of rapport with people to where they're not freaked out if you touch them, because if you establish that rapport, you can, with their permission, help to move them into a position, or sometimes I'll actually show them the position myself that I want them to get into, and so they can actually see a little bit of the body mechanics, and that makes it easier for them to get into that. If people are really uncomfortable with their hands, sometimes having a prop on hand can help a lot with that, just give them something to do with it.